Hello everyone again. The Kektili team is coming live to you today to tell you about the horrific event currently taking place in Kenya. Anti-tax protest enter parliament, police open fire. And today we invited our guest, Lavender from Kenya, to this conversation to reveal in more detail the topic of protest and why this happened. So thank you very much, Lavender, for taking the time to tell our followers about everything that is happening in your country. And I would like to start with a simple question to you. Could you please tell us a bit more about yourself first, and then we will move on to the hot questions about the protest.
Thank you, Alexandra, for inviting me and the Kektil team for the platform. I'm a Kektil colleague myself, and so it's great to share this platform and talk about the most pressing issues. My name is Lavender Okore. I'm a youth and a Kenyan citizen by birth. I recently joined the Kektil Youth Community Kenya Board, worth to mention because I personally sit there to support the amplification of the youth voice, their youth involvement in national decision-making, as well as transformative social, political, and economic engagement for them. So prior to joining this board, I served as a public policy and regulatory affairs consultant, as well as a stakeholder relationship management consultant, which I have held for quite a long time now. And then after that, I proceeded to be an education quality assurance consultant as well for about 6 years. I've had a chance to coordinate and supervise a number of projects, the most essential ones being public-private partnerships, through which I had a chance to work very closely with the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, and a few state departments, but mainly as a private sector stakeholder. So currently I am a student, and my research leans heavily on accountability systems for healthcare investments in developing country contexts, which involves budgeting for health, involves money we receive in form of grants and such issues. So any topic on accountability has me very closely listening into it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's really great to know more about you. And to be honest, it's really sad that we need to meet and discuss with you in that conditions about such horrible things that's going on right now in your country. So I have my first question. What are the main demands of the anti-tax protests? Could you share the information about that more?
So I think I would like to just rephrase that, and even maybe we speak about the events leading to that before we speak about the main events. And even before we speak about the events leading to that, I would like to just take a moment to say that first, it's a very, very sad but very monumental period for my country. And before we speak about the issues, let's talk about the people. The taxpayers who are shot, tear-gassed, maimed, and injured while exercising their democratic rights. My age mates and fellow countrymen who I have watched on television chanting, "We are peaceful protesters," but we've seen armed officers like literally turning guns at them. I'm just here to say, it's really hard to speak about anything else without taking this opportunity to deeply empathize with the families and just send out our heartfelt condolences to them, and just say that to every family who has lost a member, any family whose member was a peaceful protester and was out there championing for our rights, asking for democracy, asking the government to listen to us as youths, those who put up a spirited fight and action against the punitive actions of government, and those who are against policies and the role of government in intimidating its electorate. And this has gone on for time immemorial. I mean, this is not the first time. We've had demonstrations before, as much as they didn't have majority of the youth, but somehow, somewhat, people have always died in these demonstrations. And so for me, I feel like death is really the most painful bit of it. At this point, I would like to just say, we are very sorry. We are very sorry for what happened. We are with you. I watched this and teared up as a Kenyan youth. And literally, I was shaking. I was like, what's going on? Having witnessed the post-election violence as a very young person back in 2007, all these pictures, images just brought back the memories. And so a really sad moment for us. So as a Kenyan youth, I would like to stand in solidarity with my fellow youth and affirm them that yes, they didn't do anything wrong. We are right. It should not have ended in that way, in whatever manner. It does not always have to end in that way. Life of a human being is sacred. We deserve to be treated with dignity, where leaders have been entrusted with the responsibility to do so, and especially where we expect them to represent us based on the goodwill that we've bestowed unto them. So that said, I also want to just echo that to our authorities, it's a mighty shame. Sorry to say, but it's indeed a mighty shame. The entire world, and most importantly, us, our mothers, our fathers, our own people, us as Kenyans, have watched us sacrifice lives, literally, for a legislative document. It could have cost us anything but not lives, if you ask me. It could have cost us every other thing but not lives. As I speak to you, it's over 100 people who have died right now. There was an open fire shootout in Githurai last night. It's unfortunate, and as much as there are new developments, even as we are speaking, that we'll talk about, I want to say that it didn't have to get here. It must never get here. We are watching the government move without empathy. The government, for a long time until this moment, where things are now a bit tight, have paraded itself to be addressing everything other than the real issue at hand. And I would like to say that I'm very proud of the youth who have raised their voice, Kenyans who have spoken through all the possible avenues, be it international media, mainstream media, social media, those who have participated in the live process, the Law Society of Kenya, which has put up, until this meeting, has just obtained orders to bar the state from deploying military, as had earlier been gazetted. And we like to see such efforts because they are tangible efforts that are pushing for youth advocacy towards policy. And not just youth, all Kenyans who are speaking to this, because it's a united front. There are some MPs who have really represented the voice of the people. Kenyans have used AI, video clips, resources, hashtags, everything possible to just communicate their priorities. But clearly, I think the government was, for the longest time, hell-bent on its own interest, which according to them seems to be the people's interest. So I wonder which people, because the people are out on the streets. So if you ask me about the events leading to this, I would like to amplify the messaging and to respond to your question on why Kenyans are on the streets. I would just say that, one, as much as the president said that he's providing security for us, yes, security is crucial, but as a Kenyan and as a youth, we are saying we are not on the streets because we feel unsafe in the manner in which the government is trying to make it seem and look for everyone. We feel unsafe, yes, but we feel economically and socially unsafe. Yeah, if you get that right, Alexandra, we are saying we need protection, but not by the military, as the government is interpreting it, at least not for now. Kenyans are feeling the danger of hunger. They are feeling the danger of lack of proper healthcare, lack of proper health coverage, unemployment, high price levels, graft and corruption, unmatched lack of accountability. And they're simply telling the country and the government, who wants to be safe and hungry anyway? We are saying, let's pause everything else. If you want to give us security along the lines of these issues that we are speaking about, and not the security to be guarded by officers and to be policed around. So that's one of the reasons, and those are some of the events that are leading to people being very raged and being out on the streets. And also, I would just like to put it out there that another thing that's leading to the situation that we have right now is what we are struggling to understand, at least as youths, is that we are glaringly faced with the danger of poverty, depression, hopelessness. And for youth, even for me as a person who is speaking, we are in a situation where we feel we are likely to end up with no direct return on investments to our parents' investments in education. So we are simply struggling to understand why the government is so committed and is telling us we are going to protect you from protesters. We are the protesters. We are saying the government does not need to protect us from ourselves. Yeah, we don't need protection from our own selves. If anything, we would like the presidency and the legislature, and that's what we are saying in the protests, to protect us from corrupt leaders, to protect us from unwarranted external debt, to protect us from deeply rooted shackles of tribal politics that we've witnessed over time in Kenya, to protect us from the misinformed representatives in parliament, the executive itself that we've seen living affluent lives, extravagance all around when people don't even have the basics. We want protection from misappropriation of taxpayers' money, and that's why people are going after this particular finance bill that we're speaking about today. And as the youth, we want protection from unlawful arrests, so people who are voicing our concerns, which we've seen, and also protection from constrained freedom of speech. So if the government is to offer security, this is what the youth of Kenya are demanding. And mainly if you listen to the anti-tax protesters, they're saying, in summary, they're saying, as much as there are issues on the income tax proposals, the specific things around digital content monetization and broadening the tax base, digital service tax, there are very particular things around withholding tax, VAT, things that were earlier on zero rated but have now been standard rated or exempt. And we are saying on the specific schedules and acts, these have been specified, but Kenyans are simply saying, we do not want the entire bill. They don't want to pay more taxes, leave alone the amendments and the percentages and the specific saying, let's say now it was 1.5%. No, they're saying we don't want the bill. And the reason why we don't want the bill is they're asking the government to pause collection of more taxes until what is collected translates to what has been committed for. So until the outrageous budget is reviewed, until reallocations are made, until we are reassured that we are never going to have building renovations costing us over 600 million shillings, and until they tell us that not even on this specific bill, never again will we be having points of discussion as a country, that we are having budgets of over 600 for spousal offices, renovation of buildings that cost less to build. And until unconstitutional offices are treated as such and resources are allocated to the rightful sources or the priority areas that we think are a priority. So until these resources are allocated and the ones allocated to unconstitutional offices are withdrawn, Kenyans are simply saying we are uncomfortable with paying more taxes. So any bill that's coming in to ask for more taxes, we are not for it. And those are some of the demands. I think that's the main demand of Kenyans. Give us accountability, get rid of what is not necessary. Let's use what we have first because we can't afford any more until we see that what we have given out is working for us.
Thank you very much for saying all of these truths and how it's going on. I'm solidary with all Kenyans people right now because in Ukraine we had a similar situation 10 years ago that brought us occupation of our territory by our neighbor country. And then it escalated to the really huge war that we face right now. So I completely understand you, how you're feeling in that time, and how is it to see how your country, all people protest against the government, how they fight for their freedom, for their safety, for everything that they have in their lives. And we also had a lot of killed people 10 years ago when we had one of the hugest protests in the European Union, Euromaidan, when we fought for our European future. And we had over 100 people killed by police that were just protested, though I completely understand how it is, and I'm solidary with you in that way. But let's continue our discussion just for our viewers, for everyone who will see this conversation, will understand why it's happened, how it could be escalated, and other question that we will discuss it that will brings more light on that situation that's going on right now. So my next question that I would like to ask you that how has the Kenyan government justified the new tax policies? Could you share more information about that, please?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be very objective about that. So we have master documents in place, and this now I'll speak as a person who now comes from a policy point of view and strategy point of view. And we have the Vision 2030, a good document with forecast that we've been working towards for the longest time as a country. And this government is also after the Vision 2030. And the manifesto of the government was based on the BETA model, bottom-up economic transformation model, and which is clear and is acceptable. So the key documents that I'll draw attention to, which the government has based the estimates, the budget, and this financing tool on, is then the Vision 2030, the Medium-Term Plan 4, and the Medium-Term Revenue Strategy. Very clear documents. And to achieve the revenue targets that the government has, then they're sticking to expand the tax base, which is also economically allowable. Yeah. Anyway, and if you speak to anyone who does economics, it's okay to expand the tax base, but the ramifications are the ones that are questionable. So yes, we had the budget policy statement 2023-2024. There was a bit of heat around the finance bill 2023 as well, which later passed with amendments. Then we had the budget policy statement 2024-2025, which everyone is saying is unrealistic because the country stands as a budget of 3.9 trillion. So the government is saying we need 3.9 trillion Kenya shillings to operate. But then the citizens are retaliating and telling them, yeah, justified, and you have this plan. But if we can't afford it, we can't afford it. So if we can't afford it, we simply can't. So when you look at this document, 3.9 trillion, the sources are in terms of we have grants, we have revenues raised from the citizens, and then we have a deficit, I think, that comes to around 700 million Kenya shillings. And what Kenyans are saying is we have individual offices with a budget of this 700 million deficit. So what is so hard in simply calling off these offices, things like the CAS offices, which are unconstitutional, and getting rid of that deficit? The president's advisors are earning so much in a year, 289 million in a year for one advisor. And they're saying, if we can't afford, and we are saying we are feeling the high cost of living, we are feeling the pinch, why not make readjustments? We have spousal offices for the deputy president, the prime cabinet secretary. They're saying, can we reappropriate what's there for us to be able to manage our finances as a country? Because what the government has simply put before us is a budget. And these are the allocations that they're telling us we have to, that have led us to this amount that we are talking about right now. But it also comes at a time where we are seeing in the news that there are illegal tax waivers of over 3.4 billion Kenya shillings by the Kenya Revenue Authority. So the question is, the government is justifying all this on the projects and the programs and the allocations to the various offices, but the people are saying revise the expenditure, seal the loopholes. We simply can't afford to give more at this time. And I understand that the government is targeting an increase in revenue collections up to 20%, I think, by the year 2027. I think I read a report
20%?
from 14, we are currently at 14 to 20% by 2027. I think if I put it rightly, I read a report like that by KPMG. So yes, we want a rise in revenue collection so that we can have more efficiency and all these things. But Kenyans are asking for one thing: tax us, yes, but let us see completed projects at a level that is proportionate to the committed resources. They're saying, let the taxes work for us. Otherwise, paying taxes, then going back to out-of-pocket expenditure for most public goods, public services, utilities, is a punitive action. And I feel it as a Kenyan citizen. I see my parents feel it. I see my friends feel it. It's not easy to live right now. So we are simply saying, it's as a fiscal measure, it could be viable, but in the circumstances that we are in as a country, it is not viable for us at the moment. Given the levels of unemployment, it is not viable for us at the moment. So they are simply saying, find other ways, find other avenues. We want a people-centered strategy towards the social and economic justice system in Kenya, and we are simply rejecting the Finance Bill 2024 because of these reasons. So yes, technically, and in terms of numbers, the government has structured their documents, their budgets and everything. But from the point of view of the people, from the economic circumstances, we simply can't pay more.
I got it. Thank you for just describing everything, explaining everything, how it's gone. And can you describe the sequences of events that occurred when protests entered the parliament building? I remember it was just happened a few days ago, and that was horrible things.
Yeah, I think at first, there were rumors of it at first, but I don't think we believed in it as much until it happened. And it never stamped the authority and the sovereignty of the people like it did. And it just shows that people are willing to go to all extents to communicate that, yeah, as a country, we are pressed. And they were like, we've tried to talk. The past week, we've been talking we've been talking on social media, we've been peacefully demonstrating, and careless and irresponsible leaders have been responding to us in a manner that they want to respond to us in, unfortunately. And we've been seeing such scenarios. And then as the protests were going on yesterday, Parliament proceeded to pass the bill amidst the protests. And the frustrated protesters walked towards Parliament because they said, we've left everything we are doing. We've communicated. We've said we don't want this bill. We've said we cannot afford. Is it a matter of life and death? What is so hard in revisiting the whole thing? What is so hard in starting over? So this is a personal opinion. Again, as I wasn't on ground, what I think would have fueled this is protesters were simply frustrated. They felt misrepresented, they felt ignored, and they passed a vote of no confidence over the government. So, and this happened in form of mass action. So, based on the clips that I've watched online, I believe that they were frustrated protesters. They walked into Parliament. I've seen videos. I can't reliably tell who it was, whether it was snipers or police officers, but I've seen people being shot at. And I think when that bill passed, 8 people died. I've seen one very disturbing image of a patriot lying dead outside Parliament with his head wrapped on the Kenyan flag, with the Kenyan flag. Enraged protesters chanted that power belongs to the people. The moment people died, the chants began, and they said they'll no longer be intimidated. Parliamentarians are no longer representing them, and business is going on in Parliament as usual. So they disrupted the ongoing parliamentary proceeding. The staff members and the parliamentarians had to vacate before the public made its way to the chambers. But we saw a very unique turn of events within Parliament. They managed to get the mess, they managed to get the regalia for parliamentary staff, and they recorded TikTok videos. It was just messaging in all forms that this cannot go on. It can't be business as usual. And they managed to walk out with the mess, and they were chanting, we are peaceful. We want you to reject the finance bill. Stop killing us. And even as all this was going on, a medic was still shot dead when rendering services to the protesters that had been injured. The Red Cross tents were tear gassed. And we were like, I think there was a lot of mayhem and disorganization around it on part of government and how they were responding to the whole situation of curtailing the response. But I want to believe that because these protesters had been there since morning, I want to believe that there was a trigger. And because I have seen actual people lying lifeless and I have seen blood, brains on the roads, someone you're protesting with who was by your side, if you see them lying down, I mean, it's death. So it's triggering enough. So not to justify any act of violence, but here to say that I believe Kenyans were hell-bent on passing a message. And the more pressure the government put, the more hard stands the more hard lines the government drew, the more it fueled their desire to remind the government that power belongs to the people and we want to be heard.
My gosh, that's really horrible even to hear it from you. Now, I was thinking that after 3 years of war, I won't be able to impressive of anything because I guess that I saw everything in that word after war in my country and all the deaths and all the terrorist attacks. But after your story is again back me to all these feelings and all these triggers that you shared. And I have just curious question: can you share any maybe personal stories or testimonials from individuals directly affected by the protest or the police actions? Maybe you know someone and this is close friend or relatives.
I would not talk about the personal ones, for me to protect them, of course. But from what I've seen generally on social media, I've seen images of, if I talk about how the protests affected each, I think I've seen images of protesters assisting police officers. And I don't know, I wouldn't say it's selective content really, because these have come up on my timeline randomly. And I've seen the protesters assisting them. There's a police officer who had fallen off a truck. It is the protesters who helped him. I've seen another one who needed water after being tear gassed. They helped him wash his face. I've seen images of people rescuing civilians who are in the middle of being harassed by police officers. And one caught my attention because I had one plead with the police saying, I am here because of the price of diapers. I can't afford, and I've lost two wives right now because I can't afford diapers. And he was really pleading, and the people really had to gather and tell the policeman, leave him alone, for him to stop harassing him. And I would just see everything that's going down. And honestly, these people didn't, like this particular guy, I didn't see him with anything. He was literally just there saying, reject the finance bill. I've seen protesters being tear gassed on live TV interviews. We had an article with Kektil yesterday. I think it's there. Obama's sister, Obama, who is President Obama's sister, was tear gassed alongside Larry Madowo, a CNN reporter. There were other protesters who have been tear gassed since last week, honestly. So you can imagine how it is like to voice your plans in that scenario. And I would like to say that the most unfortunate event is, as of last night, there was a shootout, an open fire shootout in Githurai, which is one of the low-income areas in Nairobi, has majority of the voters majority of them voted anyway for the government. And one unique thing with this protest is it doesn't have a side, whether you voted for or against the government. People are speaking the same language. People are saying we are demanding accountability. In fact, right at the backyard of the president, there are protests there. I've seen billboards being brought down with the first lady, which she was supposed to launch some projects there. People have gone up, and it is unusual because in the past the opposition regions would protest, but right now there are protests everywhere. There are protests in parts of the country where we've never witnessed protests before. So we can't sit here and say we are alluding this to the opposition, we are associating this with the opposition. It's not. There's no particular person who has called the protests. People have gone out of the streets based on the pressure that they're feeling. And I've seen very disturbing videos of Githurai. I've seen a post, I think, also can verify its credibility, but I've seen a post that I want to believe that there's a person who sustained injuries and succumbed to 45 bullets. So you can imagine 45 bullets, one body. I think that's really extreme. Again, we'd like to check the sources for that. But if it is true, then it's a very sad state of affairs currently in my country. And the circumstances surrounding it, what I've read so far is that apparently a police officer was killed, which is also a very unfortunate situation. But then if this happened, then several innocent civilians have died right now in that mess. And it is very uncalled for. It is very unfortunate as well. So everyone right now is standing with Githurai as the mess is still going on right now.
Have there been any notable social media campaigns of that or hashtag related to the project that we also can share it in our social media?
Several, Alexandra. I would say there's been a lot, and this has really helped mobilize the strategy around this project. And for me, it's more of an advocacy, it's more of a call for humanity, it's more of a call for accountability. And we've been able to connect. Kenyans in the diaspora have connected. The international community has been watching. We were trending in Poland yesterday, I think, 2 hashtags. And that's just how uniting it is for us as a space. Though at some point there were some elements of intimidation, I think. And as much as we don't have clarity over that, I think there was some interruption in internet connection in Kenya. As we know, this campaign was majorly being driven on social media. So there are a couple of hashtags. The most popular one is Reject Finance Bill 2024. There's Total Shutdown KE. There's Zakayo Stop Killing Us. And then there's hashtag Stop Killing Us, hashtag Tukutane UON, hashtag Road to State House. There are quite a number. Occupy Parliament, hashtag Occupy State House. Then there were hashtags around advocacy for the release of the people that had been unlawfully arrested and some that had been abducted. So there was a hashtag around hashtag Free Billy, hashtag Free Shad, hashtag Free Gabriel Oguda, who has been freed today. Then there was hashtags for the immediate first 2 people who were killed during this protest. That was hashtag Justice for Rex. Rex died. And it's a really sad turn of affairs. Justice for Evans, and then there's also a hashtag for impeaching the president. So hashtag impeach Ruto. So there are quite a number. I might not have covered all of them, but best believe there's activity on social media. There's a push beat, celebrities, artists, influencers, individuals like me, anyone who is empathetic enough and pained, anyone who is a true Kenyan loyalist, people have come out and they're speaking to this.
That's great that everyone united just for really great things to help all people in your country. And I really glad to hear that social media helps in that. But also, had there been any responses from the international community regarding the protest and the police action?
Yeah, there has been response. Indeed, there has been response. There's been response from international media. There's been response from the international community generally. And for personal reasons, I wouldn't want to go into the details for each one of them because of some reservations for some of them. But I can mention the ones that I've engaged with so far. I think that so far I've seen some support from an individual Zimbabwean MP. I've seen Bobby Wine from Uganda pass a message to the Kenyan youth and support the action. I have seen, like I mentioned, trending in Poland. I've seen Kenyans in diaspora take action. I've seen CNN give us coverage. I've seen Al Jazeera give us coverage. We're on the first page of the Wall Street monumental. I would say the United Nations Secretary General gave out a statement. We've seen joint embassy statements for most of the embassies in Kenya. So yes, the international community is watching, but one that has really translated into action is that today the Global Peace Leadership Conference organizers canceled the opening remarks by the president. So the president was to address to have a keynote address at this conference on 26th, which is this morning, but they just came out and canceled it because of what's going on in the country. So yes, entities are responding, institutions are responding, bilateral bodies are responding, individuals are responding, other African politicians are responding as well, and Kenyans themselves are responding from wherever they are.
I agree to hear that international community also supports you in that protest and help you to share as much as possible everywhere information. And I believe if more people will get to know what's going on right now in your country and other countries that face some such similar issues, it is possible to get more support from international community, not only support like words, but also some actions, some finance as well that will be really useful uh, to bring peace for people's life in your country. And I have some few last questions for our today's conversation. Next one, it is what measures, if any, had the government taken to address the protest concerns?
I might not give you tangible measures, to be honest, but on my part, I've seen moves which, according to me, are misconstrued on the part of government. And I'm saying this because they have taken some levels of action, but this is not what people want. And I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone. For this one, I'm simply saying based on my own analysis and reading the mood, reading the room, based on my own pressures as a Kenyan citizen. That is not what I expected. That is not what we wanted. So first, the committee amended the bill and they proceeded to amend it and table it when the public was saying, no, let's go back to the drawing board. And they thought, yeah, you don't like all these proposals, so let's bring it out. So first, the move to try and remedy this was to amend, and people went back to the streets and told them, actually, people went for the first time to the streets and told them, do not amend, reject. So amendment, as much as it's allowable and it's legal and it's constitutional, is not what was expected by the public. It's a move to try and curtail the issue and address the issues, but it's not. The other thing is, yesterday, the National Assembly hurriedly passed this bill in under 2 hours. even amidst the opposition members of parliament walking out in protest. And the reason they were walking out because they are not our representatives, like we had said. We said this protest is centered around issues, not around the opposition. But they said, we have listened to what the people are saying, and we cannot pass this bill. We withdraw amendments because they don't want it amended. So we want it, they said they want it rejected. So they're not going to propose any amendments, therefore the bill passed. So the government action to pass the bill also does not address the concerns of the people. I spoke a little bit about internet disruptions, and the main service providers as Safaricom came out and said the cables had been cut under the sea and whatever. But the restoration period did not make that seem to be true. And everyone is out questioning how the cables were fixed in an hour. So everyone is saying this must have been a well-coined move to disrupt engagement over the internet and on social media. And that is literally denying people the right to air their issues. And the other thing was the government has made a move to arrest the most vocal people and abduction of influencers and activists and the useful. We are currently looking for Kaskazini is still missing, and a number of people are missing. I think it's around 6 or 7 yet, because I've seen the last person that I've seen has been found is Gabriel. And I think this is indirect intimidation. It's direct intimidation, but there's also indirect intimidation because the chief of staff of the Law Society of Kenya was also abducted yesterday. And it's because we've seen the Law Society of Kenya come forward very strongly from the beginning of these protests. And like I'd mentioned, they're even barring the deployment of the military right now, and they've been at the forefront. People have been arrested. They've gotten legal aid and support free for them to be released. And so for the chief of staff of the Law Society of Kenya to be arrested, I feel it's an indirect message of intimidation to the president of the Law Society of Kenya. And I don't think the government that's a right move on the part of the government. Again, these are my opinions based on how I'm watching things unfolding. And that's not how a democracy operates. That's not where we are in this day and era, and that's not where we should be ideally. So I expected better moves other than these moves that we are seeing from the government, because even in the UN Secretary General statement, he called for this. He used particular, I wouldn't quote them because the language is very specific, but it's obvious that there are people that we don't know where these people are, and they were voicing our concerns and they were part of the protest. So can we know where they are, and who arrested them? Why? For what reason? Why were they taken? Why are they missing until now? Why don't we have information about it until now? Other than that, we've seen individual government officials and members of parliament issue careless statements when people are protesting and saying, we want this and that. And they're saying one of them said, we'll pass this bill at all costs. And another came out to say that the youth who are protesting and the Gen Z are sponsored by Illuminati. It's very, very unbelievable statements. And these are unacceptable remarks, especially when a country is bleeding and they're feeling their pain, and our country is literally saying, we have reached our maximum. We can't take any pressure anymore. And you take onto a platform and carelessly utter such statements. I think it's irresponsible on their part, especially as leaders. And then eventually, after things turned a little bit ugly last evening, and there was the invasion of parliament, buildings on fire, individual MP properties were set on fire, offices, houses, City Hall, and the office of the governor for Nairobi, the building where it sits. I think the president issued a notice that he'd be giving a press statement. And during that presser, I think our expectations as the Kenyan citizens were very high. We expected some of the key issues to be addressed. And one of the key issues that I've told you, we've used all forms and formats of messaging. From humor, we've even used humor, used videos, used infographics, done comparative analysis, drawn from different country contexts. We expected that the first discussion, top on the list, the key issue to address would be directly related to the finance bill. But then his biggest commitment in that presser was that he will provide security. And he alleged that the protesters are being disturbed by criminals, and therefore the Kenya Defense Forces will be deployed to restore normalcy and order. So again, priorities. So I think as much as the government has been really trying to fix it, it hasn't been working in favor of what we see as priorities, and the weight of it has been just people getting really mad at the fact that it's like they are not hearing us, or they've decided they'll do nothing about it, until I think less than an hour ago, where the president, I think, has been addressing the country. I've not followed because I'm on this interview. And the issue is that he has decided not to assent to the bill. So he has finally said he's sending it back to Parliament. And at what cost, though? I would want to leave it there. At what cost? Yeah.
I got it. I got it. Thank you very much for sharing again and again and explaining everything for our viewers, for all the people. And for the last question, I would like to ask you how everyone of us, everyone who will see our video today, can help Kenyan's people, can support Kenyan's people, what we can do all together for bringing peace in your country.
I think it's helping us just clarify that this is not, it's not a violent fight. It's not a violent front. It's just amplifying the messaging out there and standing with Kenyans as they fight for what is rightfully theirs and what is owed to them by the government, as they fight for accountability, because once we fix it, we become more sustainable, and it can become a case for other countries as well, because we are looking at a situation where we want to be self-sufficient countries, and we are looking at a situation where we want to be part of the happy countries. We are looking at a situation where we want to live a fulfilled life, and it's the basics. It's nothing technical. It's not in the percentages in the taxes. It's in the soft aspects of this bill, because when you look at it, people see it as it originated from a punitive stance, and not really an empathetic and people-centered point of view. And if it did originate from that, then, because we are asking, the question most Kenyans are asking is, what is in this bill that people can't come down to talk? Why do we have to spend all these days? Why are we even losing lives for it? Why are we using resources to say that we don't want it? What is really at stake that is being guarded so much? So the question is, how can we then understand that what Kenyans are fighting for right now is not a fight of hate, but it's a fight of accountability. It's a fight of good governance. It's a fight of good leadership. It's not a fight for classism, geopolitical allegiance. It's not a fight of self-interest. It is a unified fight for social justice. And that's what we need, all the voices on board, locally and internationally, to stand with Kenyans and say, where there's extremism, let's cut down. But it's a justified fight for social justice, because, and I don't know if there's a point, maybe I'll just make the last remarks as I go with this, and it's to say the turn of events in Kenya is unacceptable, it's unfortunate, and it is unconstitutional, if you have to ask me. And we have one of the best constitutions, I would say. We have one of the best constitutions that we should adhere to and implement, and all the youth want in Kenya is to be heard. That does not warrant, and I'll reiterate again, that must not cost us lives. And the question, therefore, is, because it has cost us so much already, it has cost us hundreds of lives. I've seen mothers today cry on live video, and it's really painful. The question is, what next from here? And at this point, I think I'll speak to the young people through the Kektil group. In whichever countries they are in, I'll speak to the young people in my country, because we've decided that we are formless and we don't have leaderships, and we'll organize ourselves, because through this protest, we've organized ourselves, we've organized systems, it has run, the strategy is working. We have coordinated ourselves. We've had the message out there. We've leveraged on social media and platforms. We've gotten the attention of the international community. And at least the president has accepted not to accept the bill as now. Of course, the options, that are two more options and steps to be followed through Parliament. And we'll be watching to see what goes on from there. But what next from here? To the young people, perhaps we are going to be the electorate that will be harder to manipulate going forward. And that would be the joy of this fight. For those people that we've lost, I think it's only fair that we remain an electorate that is impartial, not easy to manipulate, perhaps one that is ready for liberation, one that won't buy very long decorated manifestos and strategy documents when it comes to the time to go back to the ballot and exercise our democratic rights, that we are going to stand by good governance. And it's worth monitoring what's going to happen in Kenya in the next few weeks, up to I think maybe 21 days, the next month, and 3 years to come, because 3 years from now we'll be going back to the ballot. So it's important to keep monitoring, and also to ask everyone around the world to keep monitoring. But safe to say that Kenya has demonstrated that sovereignty has been revitalized. Power belongs to the people. The youth are involved and participating in the policy space. We are reclaiming our power as citizens to participate, which is very important. And most importantly, we keep demanding accountability on the part of government, and we keep asking our government, do what is right. Do what is right by your people. Do what is right by your citizens. Do what is right by us, because we've entrusted you with responsibility. We've entrusted you with resources. We've literally entrusted you with our lives. So that's what we are asking as of this point for everyone, locally, internationally. This is how you can support Kenya. Make sure that justice is served, and that for those who have lost their lives also, justice is served, and the responsible officers who caused the loss of lives are brought to book.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for mentioning that. And all of our viewers and we all together, we will try to do our best in everything that you ask us for help and support. So I get that we will be able to all together bring peace for your people, and not only for your people, for all of the countries that face protests, wars, and other crises that they have right now. So I would like to thank you very much for your time, for sharing the truth, for our today conversation. I know it is wasn't easy for you to share all of the truth, to share what's going on right now with the death and the situation that your country and your people faced and fight right now. And everything changed in every minute. And as you mentioned that during our conversation today, it already should change a lot of things, and we are going to check all the news and everything what's going on in social media. Also, thanks our viewers for being with us today, and this video will be saved on our YouTube channel. So everyone who will be interested to understand what's going on right now in Kenya and to know truth and help somehow from each of us sides for your people, there will be all the information on our YouTube channel and all the social medias of the Cocktail program. So thank you, Lavender, once again for your time and everything that you're doing